Yeah, I'm Ray Johnson. I am a former insurance broker because I retired at the end of January in 2020, last year. So maybe good timing, but certainly very challenging for all of us, as you know. Need I say more? But a big welcome. We've got a great crowd today compared to our normal conference. Last year, we had 200 delegates and we ended up with about 90 because everything was kicking off at that stage. And some of my colleagues on the team, and I must thank Julie in particular from the CII, Julie Hicks, Gareth and a few others on our team that's brought this to you today in a virtual capacity. This is our 8th conference and we have various institutes from the regions, which is really great. So it's good to have you here today. And we've got over 500 delegates. We've got, I will do a shout out. So I'm from the Mid-Kent Institute and I sit on the council. We also work very closely with the Royal Tunbridge Wells Institute to do this conference, but we're sharing today, and I've mentioned Bournemouth, Cambridge, Chelmsford, Guernsey, Guildford, Jersey, Luton, Hertfordshire on board, North Downs from Norwich, Southampton, Peterborough, Reading from Sussex, and all from those areas, and apologies if I have missed anyone out. Also today we have with us the Kent Invicta Chamber of Commerce. They're helping with our hosting, so thank you to them, which is quite a unique thing. So if you're looking to do conferences, give them a shout because they're really good at this stuff. Saves us having to get involved in that. But also within the delegates, we have people from various sectors as well. So we've got solicitors, accountants, people from the Personal Finance Society, and we've even got a couple of people from local authorities and universities as well. So a very good crowd. So again, welcome on board. Normally I'd say the fire rules. So if there's a fire, but I guess you know where to go. It's either outside your back door, I guess in your room, or straight out the window. So if something happens or we see something adverse on the screen, we know what to do. So today we've got a hashtag for those that are into Twitter. KentConf, that's KentConf, and also at MidKCII, and no doubt you have your own as well, so please do share on the social media. I would like to say a big thank you to our sponsors. So today we have Sutton Winston, Allianz, Aston Lark and Flint Insurance that have helped bring together everything today and supporting the event. This year we thought we'd do something different and do something for charity. Probably most of you are aware that we are supporting the Kent Association for the Blind down in this area, and I for my sins are going to be doing my 21st London Marathon in October. It should have been last Sunday, so of course it's all been changed, and my aim is to get over £100,000 during those years of running. I'm up to 92, so if you guys could help with that process, that would be great. You'll see the holding slides that will have the link to my Just Giving page. Thank you if you're able to do something. It'd be really appreciated just to achieve that goal. So within the realms of the CII, you probably know a bit about it, but do check out the CII. There's such vast range of tools and facilities to help you. During these challenging times, and do check those through because they're really very useful. So today we're going to learn about various aspects of affecting our sector. The usual suspects, a bit about the market, about threats, maybe opportunities and the challenging landscapes that we are in. How can I not say the dreaded word COVID? I usually call them challenging COVID, or I've certainly thought of some other words, but I won't share them with you today, or crazy COVID. But it's amazing how, where we are, how we're dealing with it, how we're going to move on, and we're going to learn how to bounce back a bit later, in particular with Melissa and Esther, a brilliant co-team, and that's going to be really exciting. So, look forward to that, to give us some ideas how to get out of this black hole. But I think we are in a positive light, moving forward in the right direction. It's going to take time, but we want to help or do whatever we can to help you. So, you can't believe that, I know we sometimes often reflect with it, but to think that with our sector, or really quite a lot of businesses that I've come across within the realms of the chamber as well, and my chamber colleagues that are with us today, it's incredible to think that something that would take a generation to change, the way that we're now working, even this was done in 2 weeks. So, how are things going to change in the future? How is technology going to, kind of reinvent itself, and what's really coming? So it's kind of exciting, challenging, we know. But one thing to remember is that you might feel a bit isolated at home sometimes, but I don't want to sound condescending, but don't forget, you're not on your own. You must reach out to people and, your colleagues, and I'm sure they'll do the same. And hopefully we can get more traction in that, because I think there is work to be done if we're open and transparent about it. We're going to learn a bit about resilience and well-being as well, which is good. Something that we might chat on if we get a chance within the Q&A, which I'll come to in a second, would be, other factors, so environment and other, the actual environment. The digital side we've talked about, maybe the disruptors and things like that. So we'll see if we can try and cover some of those things off for you. So one of the main things I'm sure you'll want to do is to share some of this with your teams and colleagues. Just to let you know, if you're happy, we are recording. So we'll be doing a Q&A session a bit later, as you know. So if you're happy with that, that's fine. What we do, we're going to be using the chat function. I see a couple of you already started, which is fine. But try to keep your message brief, if you can. Excuse me, your question brief, I should say. But also just put the name where you're trying to direct it to. So obviously it could be, Sarah, David, or Damien in this session. And of course, we're really grateful to all of our speakers and presenters today as well. If anything does fall by the wayside, we apologise. It's just because of timing. But however, we are going to be pulling that chat out, and I will be distributing those questions to our presenters today if they're really quite pertinent. So hopefully we'll be able to get back to you on that as well. So I think you're zoomed out enough from me. We'll pull on to Sarah in a few moments. So zoom in and sit back and enjoy. And hope you have a very good session today, and we look forward to moving things forward into the future. So over to Sarah. Sarah, if you could just introduce yourself as well, that'd be marvellous.
Of course, thanks, Ray. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Maliby. I'm the Director of Broker Markets at Allianz. We're really delighted to be sponsoring this event today. I'm also, one of the brilliant things about this technology is I can actually be here to present. Normally, I probably wouldn't have made it to the Kent CII conference. So it's a real pleasure to be here. So thank you for having me and inviting me. Could you put my slides up? Is that possible, Molly? Are they showing on the screen for everyone else and just not me?
No, just give 1 second if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. No problem. Bear in mind we're tight for time. I'll just start talking because the first couple of slides are just intro slides.
That's okay, Sarah. That's okay. Whereabouts are you from today? We're not exactly where you're living, but you're not in London, I take it.
I'm in Twickenham. So
right.
Yeah, I guess where would you normally host this event? Would it have been in?
Yeah, normally be in Maidstone in Kent.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's good that it'd be interesting to know who's the furthest afield. Yeah, so brilliant. Yeah. Okay, you're back on, Sarah, on that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's great. And we do have a branch in Maidstone. It is one of mine, so I have been many times. So it's not that far away, I guess. Can you move the slide on, Molly, please, to the first one about 2020? It goes without saying, really, but it was an unforgettable year. Even before COVID hit, in the commercial world where I work, we were already seeing the start of a hard market driven by, a a distressed economy, or merging into a distressed economy, and significant weather events. Storms Kiara and Dennis seem a long time ago now, but they did have a significant impact, especially not only on our customers, but also our claims teams. You know, and that did start to put prices up and start insurers starting to talk about the need for more rate. In top of that, we'd already had lots of large losses in the property space. So that uncertainty and the unstable market was also increased by a lack of clarity around Brexit. I mean, that seemed like that's all we used to talk about, but until COVID hit. And the political challenges across the world, and we don't want to mention Trump too much, but, you know, there were other countries where there was a lot of instability. And that just caused, you know, lots of uncertainty that was impacting the market. And also, we can tend to forget that the FSA probably left the commercial world alone for most of the previous years, but it was becoming increasingly intrusive last year. And then when COVID hit, you know, the analysts couldn't have predicted the impact and how long it would go on for. It has driven us into a recession. We've had government intervention on an unprecedented scale, and we've seen lots of cultural and social changes. You know, cities emptying, sorry, me banging my lamp there, rises in home working, you know, no travel, and increases in online shopping and other transactions done by digital, just out of necessity more than anything else. So it has had an impact on the physical sort of SME business that is the backbone of UK PLC. And, you know, and that's the core business for most commercial insurance books, as you all know. So there is significant risk and instability, but there's also loads of opportunities. And we are starting to see some trends emerge where it does give some opportunities. And, you know, insurers who respond with new products, new services, and new strategies are the ones that will succeed. So I'm just going to pick out some of the trends that do pose both risks and opportunities, just to share some thoughts, and I'd be interested in your comments when we get to the Q&A. Could we move on, please, Molly, to the next slide? So, as I say, we've only got 20 minutes, so I'm going to limit myself to 5 key trends or key issues, namely the hard market, the fact that we are seeing emergence of, you know, expert advice, and that trust is actually the key consideration at the moment for most customers. Digitalization, Ray mentioned it. We've had rapid, you know, digitalization of our industry. And, you know, and the consequences of that. Sustainability has actually come to the fore in a much bigger way than perhaps previously envisaged. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, hybrid working, because my personal view is it's here to stay, and we need to embrace that, but it does pose some risks and challenges as well. So we move on to the next slide, please. So this is a busy slide, and I'm sorry if it needs you to put your glasses on. So the economy is in recession, and we're in a hard commercial market for certain lines of business, such as property, packages, and some elements of casualty, such as financial lines. The Office of Budget Responsibility suggests, on a worst case scenario, that a return to pre-crisis levels of the economy may not be achieved until 2024. So, you know, that's a significant time that we're going to have to continue to be having these difficult trading relationships and challenges. Previous hard markets, as you can see from the slide, were triggered, and I can just about remember this, the independent collapsing, 9/11 and the global financial crisis. You can see that the cost of the pandemic is estimated to be $203 billion to the industry. And, you know, that's more than any event that, you know, we've ever had before. Clearly, no insurer could have covered that on their own. So this is really an industry issue. And, you know, I'm sure policymakers will be talking more about, should this ever happen again, how do we deal with ensuring there's more cover in place? And that's something we'll probably come on to talk about. In property lines, the market had started to harden before, as I mentioned, due to the weather and large losses we were seeing in our books. You know, that had driven insurers to start focusing on profit rather than growth. You know, after probably a decade or so of a soft market on property lines, we've started to try and fix our book. And that has seen, you know, a significant increase in rate. It's also meant that some insurers are reducing capacity. And it's meant that certain sectors and certain trades are, you know, very difficult to place cover for. And I know the brokers amongst you will recognise that. You know, it's seen almost market failure at some point. So things like buildings with cladding on, waste plants, you know, that has had a significant impact. And there's also seen that in care homes as another sector on the casualty side, along with, as I say, certain PI insurance covers are really very difficult to place at the moment. And we'll have to see whether there is, there's talk of, pandemic re or, other re's that the government will introduce. Personally, I don't, any market failure is not a good idea that we then result automatically to having some sort of pooling scheme, but who knows, we'll have to see. So this trend of, the hard market in certain lines has been exacerbated by the fact that during COVID, our motor revenues, which are the main book for most insurers, have dropped significantly. And normally that revenue would have cross-subsidised other lines of business. The fact that vehicles were being driven less means there's less exposure, which means premiums have dropped. So we're now seeing a soft market in the motor arena. And, that's equally challenging, when you're having negative rates and having to fight to retain your book, and we'll come on to talk about how you go about doing that. But that is meaning that even motor fleet renewals are very difficult to trade, and it's extremely challenging for both brokers and insurers alike in terms of the number of transactions that they're having to put through. So COVID has closed lots of sectors. Retail and leisure is pretty much closed as an industry for the last 12 months. And our fear has to be that once furlough unwinds, in September, that there will be significant bankruptcies, and that SME mid-corp business that, is the core of our industry will just disappear. Sorry, that's a bit alarmist. It's not meant to be. Fingers crossed. Lots of other people have a view that there's going to be a boom. So let's hope they're right. That said, however, with the drive to e-commerce, some sectors are booming, such as, transportation, warehousing, and, companies that are involved with digital transactions. So there are opportunities out there. It is a challenging market. And as I say, trading's been extremely difficult for the last 12 months, for even the most simplest renewals. So, and that's likely to remain for the next 12 months. And that's where you rely on your relationships with key broker partners to help, and find the right outcome for our customers. Should we move on to the next slide, please, Molly? So in terms of customer, there are some real opportunities out there at the moment for expert professional advisors. And I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking to the CII Kent conference. So obviously you are professionals and experts, or you wouldn't be here. But, certainly from my perspective, when I'm dealing with brokers, you can see that those that brokers who are advice-led, who understand products and can use their knowledge and experience and contacts to find the right cover for their customers at a reasonable price, are the ones that are thriving and succeeding. Those that have a more commoditized business that's traded on price are starting to struggle now. And customers are moving away to, in difficult times, they want someone they can rely on and lean on. And, we are seeing that. And likewise in insurance, underwriters and claims experts are the ones that have been successful, are the ones who are the experts in their field and can use their knowledge to write business and, calculate an appropriate price that they can, that is acceptable to all. Trust is also becoming an increasing feature for business in 21. We're seeing, and I would say this, wouldn't I, as a AA rated insurer, but we are seeing a move towards more composite, recognised insurers. Customers already expect good service, good value. It's a hygiene factor really that it's given, but they're also increasingly wanting to be have trust and confidence that their insurer will do the right thing when the time comes. And the best example we've probably got is the FCA litigation. I think that's probably damaged the industry as a reputation generally quite significantly. It's really unfortunate. Allianz right from the outset, and this is my only one plug about Allianz, I promise you, we recognise which customers had cover in place and started paying claims immediately. We weren't part of the litigation, and we did the right thing. And we've now settled 80% of claims. The ones that are remaining are just going through the quantification process. So, and it'll be interesting to see, what long-term impact those insurers who resisted paying claims have on their business. Early indications are that we are picking up new business from tenders and in the open market because of our approach and the fact that we have a strong reputation for claims, and not only the service, but the fact that we do pay claims. So as I say, that's my one broadcast about Allianz. So other opportunities that are arising out of COVID we are seeing an increase in requests and expressions of interest about cyber cover. It is very low still, the cover. There's been an increase in amount of fraud and phishing attacks during lockdown. The ABI did a survey, estimated 40% of companies suffered a cyber attack in the last year. And as I say, take-up is still low. So it'll be interesting to see if that picks up. There is also a risk for insurers in that, accumulation risks. If there would be a industry or global wide attack, that would be another significant event, not quite hopefully on the levels of COVID, but that's something that insurers are having to wrestle with. So again, risk and opportunity, and we need to pick our way through that. Really interestingly is we're starting to have conversations about parametric policies, particularly for business interruption, and it's purely off of the back of the pandemic and the fact that lots of SMEs and mid-corp customers didn't have any BI cover that applied. And so parametric policies, I'm sure you know, but are those which just pay on an occurrence of an event rather than the policyholder having to claim a specified loss. And I think that's really interesting and maybe a big shift to maybe part solving the problem of how you cover such issues that we've been through in the last 12 months. And then finally, and this is not new, but we are seeing an increase in subscription or pay-as-you-go insurance. Typically, it was in the past been down to motor in the main, but also other lines. And we have a product through a broker partner for self-employed consultants to give liability cover. So when you're on a project and working, you can trigger your cover, and when you're you're not and you're on the bench, then you don't have to pay for it. And I think that's going to continue as we move throughout the year and beyond. It's definitely a key trend, and it'll be interesting to see who has first mover advantage in that space. Right, if we move to the next slide, please, Molly. So as we all know, we've had rapid digitalization, easy for me to say, of traditional insurance models in the last 12 months. As we've probably advanced by about at least a decade, if not two, in our ability to work from home and embrace the technology and tools that have been out there for so long. No one could have predicted our ability to shift our operation virtually, which, as Ray said, was mostly done in less than 2 weeks for most organisations, and that included contact centres and parts of our business that historically we always thought had to be a physical presence. And we have all started to embrace video conferencing, online collaboration tools, and new ways of working. This investment in digitalisation will continue. The technology isn't perfect in most organisations. There's still some problems, and I think that needs us to continue to upgrade our technology. But I suspect what will happen, it won't happen in the same intensity as we move on, going forward. Interestingly, also, automation will continue with data entry and non-value activity being removed and being undertaken by robots and such as optical character recognition tools. Originally, automation in our business was to cut costs, headcount in the main, but increasingly now the focus has been around delivering improved service to customers, speed of response, and accessing and utilising data in a way that humans would find significantly challenging, and then redeploying our people and assets to really do what people do best, and that's human interaction. So it's no longer seen as a cost-cutting exercise, and that's going to accelerate with automation taking on more and more complex processes. And likewise, a few years ago, AI and machine learning, we went to conferences like this and we heard about IBM Watson, and we always thought maybe this is never going to happen. This is live and present in our businesses now. It's been used, to do basic interactions and answer queries from customers, across claims and underwriting, and that will only increase as more and more data and technology advances. And we're looking to continue to reinvest in that resource. Today on the news, I saw that driverless cars is also is being projected to happen this year. A staggering achievement, really, but it also presents lots of interesting factors for us to have to consider about insurance and determining liability and those sort of things. So in product space as well, there's been an ongoing sort of move towards a digital world, and we've put Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I don't know of any real life examples at the moment within, our UK insurance industry where we are using Bitcoin, but there are rumours that a number of the main insurers are starting proofs of concepts using them. And I suppose that's my watch this space. I think we are evolving vastly as an industry, and that's great to see from a personal perspective, having lagged behind certain other financial services for some time. If we move to the next slide, now sustainability is not a passing fad. I think people, maybe my generation, had thought that perhaps that regather myself that it was maybe something for millennials and younger folk, but it's clearly very much a boardroom issue these days. The impact of the reputation and damage caused by getting it wrong is significant, but there's also not just been a significant customer demand for issues and having a really strong record on sustainability, but it's also been driven by our employees and is now part of our employee proposition. Increasingly, people who join us at Allianz want to know what our position is on these matters. We're being forced as insurers not just to be carbon neutral. Allianz has been carbon neutral since 2012 in terms of our own operation, but we're also stepping up in 2022 to join groups and alliances that work on looking at commitments to green energy through pension investments and other investments, and looking to divest from those that are non-sustainable. And you'll have seen recently that Allianz, Aviva, Zurich, and a number of other insurers have signed up to the UN Net Zero initiative, by which the carbon emissions of their investments will be zero by 2050. It feels a long way away, but that would be a significant challenge because it's looking at all elements of the investments and the operations that those companies run. You'll also see a sustainability agenda increasingly coming into underwriting strategy, such as withdrawing from certain sectors such as waste and offering incentives for green risks such as electric cars, or driverless cars, or other elements that are much more environmentally friendly. We're also in the claims field using green parts increasingly in both our motor vehicle repairs, but also in our property repairs. And it's just such a huge impact on a whole elements of our operation. So we're also having, a look also, it's not just about the environment. It also impacts on, this element of the social world around health and safety, and do the right thing for both our customers and our employees. And companies who don't have a strong track record on good human rights and employment rights. I saw today in the paper, Amazon are being criticised for the pressure they put their drivers and their workforce on, and that does have brand damage. Again, continuing to impact across all elements. And then finally, diversity, inclusion, and just the conduct of our board and the ethics that the company operates in. Never before has, a silly comment or a silly action by a senior exec could have such significant ramifications for a brand and, the profit of that business. So it's a massive issue, and, it's here to stay. It's not just for the youngsters, and increasingly you'll see more and more companies aligning behind a sustainability agenda and the initiatives around that. Finally, if we could just move to hybrid working. In my view, it's here to stay. We put a few headlines up on the left-hand side from mostly American, it has to be said, but it's highly unlikely, I think, that insurers, having made the cultural and seismic shift operationally to work from home, that will want to move back to being permanently in the office. There's some thoughts there from people. Some people say, no, we're all going to work from home forever and a day, we're never going to meet again. And it was interesting with Goldman Sachs saying he wanted his banking team to be back in the office permanently, working like they used to. And the backlash he got from, again, coming back to the sustainability point, from shareholders as well as his own teams. So I think we will all move into this more blended model, and it's easy to see why. The vast majority of us, as you can see, want to work from home. We save huge amounts of commuting time, especially if you work in and around London. And also sickness, that's been incredible. Within Allianz, we've had our sickness levels drop to almost negligible amounts, unheard of. And as it says there, 19 million days have been saved across, well, I presume that's a UK number this year. And, you know, we all know people vary, but the vast majority of us want to work from home at least part of the week. And yeah, I think it is here to stay. You know, it has been a great success working from home. We've seen reduced sickness and saved commuting time, which has enabled people to have a more sort of better work-life balance. And as a result, we've seen increased productivity. We've also been able to recruit from a wider talent pool. And also, you know, are potentially going to reduce our office costs. We're still going to have a presence everywhere. There'll just be smaller offices, perhaps reconfigured to be more collaborative and innovative zones, rather than just banks of desks where people go to do email. And, you know, we'd be very welcome. We'd welcome you all to come and have a look when they're all unveiled in due course. But it's not all been good. And I think that's the thing we've got to remember. For a year, out of necessity, we've made it work. But, you know, onboarding talent is really difficult in a remote location. And we have a number of our team who have joined and never met anyone face to face. And that's a challenge, building that relationship and those rapports and making people feel welcome. Training and development can be done, as we're proving now, but it is more difficult if it's for a longer, more complex piece of work where you want to workshop it and, you know, peer-to-peer learning. Collaboration and innovation, that's really difficult online. It can be done, but it's much better to be in a room and workshop things. Sensitive conversations are equally difficult, you know, giving bad news or bad feedback, doing that virtually without being able to wrap around, you know, some of the softer elements is a challenge. And well-being and social, I think we all miss our friends and colleagues, and, you know, that's an important part of work life, which, you know, we need to get a balance for. So I think hybrid working is here to stay. It's, you know, there's a huge appetite for it, and it is an area for growth. But as I say, there are some risks. And, you know, when we get into working in a blended way, there's challenges around, you know, how do you do it when you've got part of the team in the office, part of the team remotely? What do you do about your location policies and remuneration, your travel policies? All of this needs to be thought through, and that cultural dynamic needs to be thought through. But, you know, it's a definite leap forward, I think, for not just the industry, but society. And we've just got to remember that, you know, we can make it work for both businesses, all our customers, and also, you know, our people, to make sure, you know, it's a success for everyone. So that's it. That's my quick synopsis of what I think the key trends are for insurers in 21. It's very much a transition year, I think, as we come out of COVID, and we'll start to see the real impact of COVID and what the opportunities are probably going into 22. But, you know, I'd be really welcome your ideas and your thoughts and comments about some of the things I presented, and interested to see if you've got any different views. So Ray, I think that's it from me. Am I on time?
Yeah, superb.
Good.
Just a wee bit every second, so it's brilliant. And it's amazing as an insurer, or probably any business really, let's face it, the amount of aspects you have to deal with, isn't it? There's just like pages of different, you know, things that have to be done to run the business, let alone sell an insurance policy. But there we are. Perhaps
yeah. So.
Absolutely. So we'll come back on to some questions later. So thank you for that, Sarah. Really appreciate it. And just to remind delegates, you know, if you want to put a question in specifically for Sarah, we'll try and pick up later on the Q&A. So now it's my pleasure to move over to David. David Thompson is the Managing Director of Sutton Winston, and he's an insurance broker. David, if you could tell us a bit about the company, and then over to you, if that's okay. Right, we're having a bit of a difficulty in getting David.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, David.
Good, it's okay. For some reason, it was telling me that the host wouldn't allow me to unmute. Okay, thanks for the introduction, Ray.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, as you say, I'm talking from a broker's perspective, and I didn't quite realise that the catchment area of this conference was quite as wide. So it's perhaps worth me sharing a little bit about our business just to help put in my comments in context. I think everybody obviously knows Allianz, so Sarah didn't have to do much of an introduction. So So our business is based in Twickenham, so I can confirm that Sarah is not speaking from our office, to my knowledge. I think she lives just up the road. We also have an office in Sussex, and we have about 130 people. We're a predominantly commercial insurance brokerage, but we also do personal lines. I think what was relevant to us, I think that maybe not relevant to everybody else, was that we had a bit of internal expertise. So we do have our own in-house risk management business, which helped us greatly with formulating our thoughts and plans as we moved through the COVID period. And being of a certain size, we had an HR department. So I'm very, very mindful that I'm be talking from that sort of perspective, whereas I appreciate there'll be some brokers on here who come from a very different perspective. They could be a business with, not 130 people, but with 13 people. So what I thought I would do is, given Sarah has pretty much said it all, it's difficult really now to sort of add to that, because I think what she said, I agreed with a lot of things she said in there was very true. So I thought I'd maybe just share a few things. Was, what did we learn through the process, and how will that influence us going forward? I think the one thing that we've learned, and Sarah's alluded to it, is the importance of IT. We were very fortunate in that we'd had a significant investment in brand new IT in 2017 and 18, which enabled us to pretty much move everyone to remote working within a week, which I thought was quite exceptional, really. We were also able to do that because we had a couple of ladies who work in our IT department who really worked tirelessly, to get us through that process, which included, believe it or not, buying and setting up about 100 new laptops, because like many of us, not everybody had a laptop. So it was tended to be account executives and senior managers and directors that had laptops and worked from home, and all of a sudden, pretty much everybody has to work from home. So I think the importance of IT in that process was massive. And I will tell you now that going forward in our business, despite having made a significant investment in IT, we will be investing even more, so that we can hopefully gain some efficiencies and maintain those efficiencies. But as Sarah alluded to also, it's all about delivering the service. So we've got to have people who are contactable just as easily at home as they were in the office. And that obviously brings, one of the challenges that we've experienced is the quality of individual staff members' own IT. We didn't really worry about this too much before, but I think this is now a really big issue. We were having to hold the hands of many staff members who were having problems with internet access at home, and then you start asking questions. How is your system configured? Something we'd really never taken any interest in before, and you find that they have got a problem with their Wi-Fi, and that's because for some reason their router is based in their garage of all places, and they're in a bedroom in the other corner of the room. So we've ended up doing a bit of hand holding. So this is a big issue for us. We will have to, if we are going to work towards a flexible working framework, hybrid, some people call it, we will be looking very closely at the whole IT situation, but not only our own IT, but also our staff's IT. The other thing that I think is very important and got us through a very difficult period of the year was our ability to communicate. And our business has been involved with something called Investors in People for many years. And we hold Investors in People gold standard. And you don't get that without having a pretty robust communication regime in your business. We thought we used to communicate a lot. Now we probably communicate with our people far more regularly than we ever did. And it is essential, because people are no longer in a physical position to communicate as they did before. And somehow or other, we've got to keep all of these dots joined up in the business. And one of the things we're very keen not to lose, and it is a big challenge going forward, is maintaining our culture. We have a particular culture in our business, and we're very proud of it, and we've spent a lot of time trying to evolve it. And as Sarah alluded to, people coming into the business that are new, they may be brand new to insurance, or they may be an experienced person. They've still got to integrate with our business, still to understand our culture, and the only way we're going to do that is by better communication. So communication again was something that was always very important to us, and that's gone right to the top of the list now. The other thing I think we're getting to grips with is everyone's different. We all have different experiences, backgrounds, and we all react to what's happened over the last year or so quite differently, and that's a real challenge. So very often we have people who are on two extremes of a view on a single subject, and that is something again that we're going to have to work through over the next year to try and find that happy ground. I'm not saying that we're going to end up with a solution that will be acceptable to everybody, because it will be a compromise, but that is something that we will have to work through, and I believe both insurers and other brokers will have to work through. The other thing that's, and I can't remember if Sarah mentioned it or not, but certainly from our point of view, one thing that has come home very firmly is the importance of compliance. We probably had more engagement at a senior level with the FCA in the last year than we probably did the last 10 years around compliance, through whoever the authority was. They were very interested in our well-being, which was very good at one level for customers, but for us it created a huge amount of work. Obviously we were able to satisfy them that we're a robust business and here to stay, but having sort of recalibrated the bar, it's quite clear now that compliance is going to have a bigger profile in our business than it ever did before. I certainly know of businesses that are smaller than us that have seen, had contact with the FCA for the first time, whereas they just really thought they were off the FCA's register. So compliance is here to stay, and you're going to have to take it seriously. One of the issues for us, I think, is we've moved from a position of having people looking at compliance as a function of their job, to we now have people where compliance is their sole job, and that's obviously a cost that has to be borne by the business, and we need to find a way of making our business more efficient so that we can absorb that cost. Otherwise it will have to be passed on to our customers. Looking ahead, again, Sarah mentioned it, so she's unfortunately stolen a lot of what I was going to say, but that happens when you go second. One of the things that we feel very strongly about is that one of the big challenges that we're all going to have over the next 12 months is what I would call the latent effect of the COVID in the business community. I was talking to a very good friend of mine who's a client of 20 years, involved in the construction industry. He's had a very successful business for many, many years. He's already made 50% of his staff redundant. He is really concerned that if he doesn't pick up a couple of tenders fairly soon, he will have to close the doors after 25 years. I also know of various companies that have had to make arrangements for the inland revenue. So this is quite a common thing when businesses get distressed. They may pay their salaries to their staffs, but they're supposed to pay the inland revenue, the tax on which they deduct from you and I. They've come to an arrangement with the inland revenue not to do that. So they've built up a debt. And at some stage in the event, the inland revenue will want their money, because I'm sure we all realise that at some stage in the event, taxpayers are going to have to pay for all of this. The country has been colossally subsidised one way or other. And at the end of the day, that's a debt that we will have to pay back over many years. And if you're like me with children, I think my adult children will be paying for this for the next 20 years. But definitely the inland revenue will want their money. And at some stage of the events, the inland revenue will go looking for it. And I think that's going to be a deferred but inevitable consequence of the COVID situation. And, I think we'll see a lot of businesses fail. And I think we'll see a lot of businesses come under extreme financial pressure. And we all know as brokers, what that means is that these clients will be coming to us saying, can you help us? We need to cut our costs. So I can see no end to the intensity of broking. As Sarah mentioned, we all know we're in a hard market. If you're a broker and you are maybe one of the owners of the brokers on this call, you will have had the same experience as I've had in relation to buying professional indemnity, which was probably one of the most tortuous processes I can recall us going through in recent years. At the end of the day, we've got that hard market to contend with, and I think we're going to have a situation where the clients are going to be pushing us. That inevitably will create opportunities for us all, because somebody else's client is my prospect, so to speak. So I think our broking teams, particularly in the commercial sector, will be extremely busy and stretched over the next year, which is why we will all have the same challenge of making sure that our teams are properly staffed, which certainly in our business, we've got a few vacancies, which some arose through the natural expansion of the business. We're creating more roles, but also quite interesting, I don't know if it was through Brexit or whether it was as a result of the COVID situation, we had a number of people who left us to go back to the countries that they originated from. I think it's probably more to do with Brexit, actually. And we've struggled to recruit people in the COVID period, mainly because it's been so difficult to train and integrate these people to the standard that we require in our business. So we've got this sort of double whammy really of, I think we're going to be exceptionally busy and we need to be fully staffed. So that's certainly a challenge my business has got, and I know a number of other brokers very well. We're in a broker alliance, and we talk very openly. And I know that nationally, that's a challenge that we've all got, this whole recruitment and integration of new staff, particularly when you've got a situation where I guess many people don't want to be the last one in, if that makes sense, because there's a concern generally that could there be a third lockdown? I don't know. All I can tell you is that from personal experience, my wife works very frontline on the NHS. She had her first vaccination about 3 days after they became available nationally. So she had a second booster a few months after that. So that was months ago. And last week she caught COVID, and she's upstairs isolating at the moment as we speak. She's fine, but it wasn't what we expected to have arise as a situation, particularly as she had been doing lateral flow tests every day of the week before she went into work, and they all showed up as negative, which is, so she's had two vaccinations, did lateral flow tests, and she still caught COVID, and it wasn't detected by lateral flow tests. So I'm a little bit skeptical. I think there's a lot more to come, both in terms of how COVID will behave. I know they're doing all sorts of social tests or sort of thing in Spain. I think about a concert where they got 5,000 people or something who were all tested negative. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like in a few weeks' time, I think, what the results are. But I think there's still plenty of mileage in COVID and the damage it can do. The other thing I just want to touch on quickly, I don't know how I'm doing for time, Ray, but talking about opportunities really is probably just generally in the business, in the marketplace, because of consolidation and the way some of the consolidators are dealing with their clients, I do feel that these businesses are very often slimmed down the service they offer to the smaller commercial client at a time when probably smaller commercial clients are realizing through what's happened with COVID that they need really good expert advice. So I think there's a big opportunity for smaller businesses, and when I'll say smaller businesses, these are clients maybe that are paying less than £30,000 in premium, where many of these businesses have been dealt with in a kind of quasi call center environment. I personally think there's a big opportunity for brokers who want to get out and talk to those sort of clients. And one of the things I'm really concerned about with remote working, etc., is what I always consider to be the eyes of a broker. I think the brokers on the call will recognise where they've gone to see a client. The client thinks they've told the broker everything they should know. You go out and you walk around the client's premises and you start seeing things which the client hasn't recognised in an insurance context that are relevant, but you as an experienced insurance person realise is something that the insurer needs to know about. And I've literally turned up at a premises to find a whole building that didn't used to be there, and they've never told me. I just remember it wasn't there last year. I've seen processes in businesses which the client has not told me they were doing. They just thought it was part of their business. It fell outside their business description and should have been included. So I'm really concerned that we don't get lazy and choose to sort of sit behind our screens rather than getting out and about and giving the value that I believe that we've all got to offer. Because getting out and seeing a risk and talking to a client, I think is a massive opportunity, A, to get it right, but B, to build the relationship with the client. I think I'm just looking at my notes here. I think, again, one of the challenges that I see coming forward is the way that we interface with insurers. I kind of laughed when Sarah started her session by saying, I wouldn't have been able to do this. I can get to you all through the screen, or and the simple fact of the matter is that in the olden days, when people got in their cars and drove around and saw brokers, insurers could maybe fit in, 4, 5 visits in a day. You can probably fit in 15 visits in a day if you're just doing it from your screen. And I think the insurers need to be mindful that they just can't fill their time by increasing the seemingly endless number of meetings that we have to have, because actually brokers have got a job, and I've just alluded to part of it, of going out and seeing clients. And we can't be spending all day talking to insurers about the client they'd like to see us get. If there's 10 insurers wanting to have the same conversation, they're all going to realise that we need to be not talking to them, we need to be talking to our existing clients. And certainly I've had the experience, and I think it is a bit of a challenge, particularly when insurers sometimes set their expectations quite high through fee service agreements. If some of you brokers have got these arrangements in place, that they will have a matrix of expecting a footprint of contact, which actually is quite overbearing at times. So to me, that's something the insurers need to revisit to make sure that effectively they don't strangle the golden goose, really. We've got to be allowed to get out and do our work and not be bogged down by having sometimes what seems to me unnecessary meetings just to tick a box at an insurer's matrix, so they can report to their sales manager and say they've been a good boy or girl in terms of seeing particular brokers. There's got to be a real commercial value to these conversations. I'm trying to just look here, really. I think I've probably said all the things I wanted to say.
Okay.
I think that's probably it.
Brilliant, David. That's absolutely superb. And you mentioned there's a few things that, you know, Sarah had covered. Well, you're right. But the good thing is why we chose you is you're a switched on broker, and you really covered a lot of ground because you're at the front end. And I noticed a lot of people nodding when you were saying a lot of things. So, you know, really appreciate that because, you know, it's a real demanding situation. We'll cover it a bit in a few moments on the Q&A, but very challenging, let's say. But yeah, thank you for that. It's a really good insight and, you know, telling us as it is. And I think that's good to be reassured or know about in that respect. So cheers for that. So now we're going to move over to Damien Glenn. Damien is the head of financial lines of Sedgwick International. Damien's done quite a few talks with the CII, so thank you for that in advance, David. He is a director, and I think if I remember rightly, David has the most, what would you call it, abbreviations or initials after his name, so titles, I should say. So maybe one day it'd be Sir Damien, but over to Damien.
Thanks very much, Ray. Morning, everybody. Forgive the suit and tie. I was given key worker status back in March last year, and I've been coming into the office every day. And in fact, to be good to the environment, I walked today in the mistaken belief I was still 21. So I'm in pain, but we'll see how we go. So I'm not going to give an overview. I'm going to talk about some detailed specific parts of COVID and the test case. And just by way of overview, it's interesting that at trial, there was a suggestion that 370,000 cases were dependent on the outcome. I don't know whether you've looked, but the FCA are updating every 2 weeks the number of claims and the amount of money that has been paid by insurer. As at 13th of April, £352 million had been paid. And that related to 10,772 claims. So it's an average cost of 32K. That is not the full picture, because what the FCA are asking the insurers for are the returns for the smaller businesses. So they haven't asked for details of large claims. So 35,000 claims at the moment have been accepted, and 12,200 a decision is pending. Now, I suspect if you added in the larger claims, we'd be about double that. But we are some way off the 370,000. So there are some specifics, that's by way of context, some specifics that I've just prepared a few slides for. So I'll share my screen and you won't have to look at me. Right. Photograph taken some years ago, as you can see. Right. So in terms of recap, I'll just, in a second, just contrast the High Court and the Supreme Court, how they got to their answers, because it's important and it leaves us in a much better place going forwards in terms of understanding the rule book. I'll talk about prevalence. That has caused more trouble than we'd expected. But I'd like to touch on disease at the premises and loss of rent claims also. So in terms of recap, there were quite a few things not included. So disease, the sort of the policyholders are reading in the press, the Daily Mail, frankly, even some of the insurance press, that everything is covered. And of course, some people that have policies where the cover is on a specified disease basis as opposed to notifiable. So they won't be getting paid, damaged denial of access. And there's some things weren't discussed. So multiple claims, how many times can you make a claim? We have issues of aggregation. And frankly, all of the claims that fire claims, flood claims, I think Sarah mentioned, we as loss adjusters were in surge mode when COVID hit, responding to storms in February. So there are pre-COVID claims that have been impacted by COVID, where mitigation strategies have been frustrated and where there has been increased loss because there have been delays in reinstatement. So None of that was included. So we have got clarity, but there are limits to the clarity we had. It's a test case, not a case between two parties. Now, just to recap how the High Court and Supreme Court got to their answers. And I'll do this in the context of the 1992 IRA bomb in London. So imagine two sandwich shops. One of them suffers impact damage to its window, the other one doesn't. But they both suffer thumping great losses because the customers aren't there. What the High Court said is the peril is COVID, and therefore everything is brought in because it's one big soup, essentially. Disease, the government response. And that is the equivalent of saying in the bomb that the explosion is the peril. And that therefore, if you have damage to your shop window, your BI loss flowing from all of the damage caused by the bomb is insured. Now, you know, that's crazy territory. What we actually did with the sandwich shops is the one that had damage, I think it was 2 weeks before the window could be replaced. So their cover was for 2 weeks. So saying that the peril is COVID or the peril is the explosion makes aggregation very difficult and frankly throws the rule book out of the window in terms of causation. What the Supreme Court have done is the Supreme Court have said the peril is not COVID. The Supreme Court have said the peril are the illnesses within radius. They are insured, the illnesses outside the radius are not insured. But because the government response is equally caused by all of the illnesses, then that is brought in as part of the consequence of an illness within radius. So the Supreme Court still conclude that insurers largely pay on disease claims, but it's really important the route that they took to get there because it leaves policy construction pretty much still in place. And going forwards, the application of the but-for test, which will usually but not always be appropriate, the rules and the process is as before. So Supreme Court, High Court, ultimately their conclusions were similar in most respects. Disease claims pay, hindrance of access often don't pay, but it's the route they took there that is important. So I'm just going to jump around a little bit. Prevalence, these are links, and it occurs to me they won't really work, I suppose, if you're clicking on PowerPoint slides, but at least you can see them. What is a little bit misleading with these links is that you go onto the NHS site or the government site and you pop in a postcode and you get an answer. What you don't realise is the answer is not for the postcode that you've put in. The answer is for an amalgamation of postcodes, and what you're getting is a local authority answer. And that may not be so much of a problem for 25-mile radius policies, but it will be a problem for 1-mile radius. So 3rd of March, the FCA issued their policy guidance, which is available on their website, and they direct people to the government site and the NHS. I must confess, I think the ONS site is better because there's a map of UK. You zoom into whichever bit you want, and they have areas in the middle of cities that are less than a mile across. When you move out to the rural areas, it's more difficult. And the FCA have subsequently issued another checker where you put in your postcode, and they do a thing. There's no audit trail, but it does something with the imperial data, and it gives you a yes or no answer. Now, whether or not that is sufficiently precise for 1-mile radius, this wasn't discussed at Supreme Court. At High Court, the judgment said that this evidence may be sufficient to get you over the line, but there will be cases where there are difficulties, and in fact, we're coming across them in practice. So for me, the ONS site is very useful, but there is also an FCA. If you go onto the FCA website, there is a checker you can click on there. So prevalence we all forgot about because it didn't even get discussed in the Supreme Court because it wasn't appealed. I'm going to keep going, just mindful of time. Now, disease at the premises. A number of people have said to me, well, disease at the premises wasn't discussed. It was discussed, but it was discussed and dismissed so quickly that if you blinked, you'd miss it. So what the FCA did in their respondent submission is they said that disease at the premises is of a different nature to disease in the vicinity. Disease at the premises would be a thing like food poisoning that might spread from the premises, but disease in the vicinity is different because that might be part of a wider outbreak. So the FCA was saying disease at the premises is, you couldn't construct the policy wording to conclude that disease at the premises brought in the government response. So notifiable disease at the premises will probably give you cover for a couple of days while you decontaminate, but it doesn't bring in the general government response. A lot of things, by the way, it's a moving and changing world, a moving feast. So what I'm saying is correct as at today, the 28th of April. I ought to just caveat that. There has been already a fast-tracked ombudsman's decision on this, where someone had cover for the local authority or public authority preventing access to the premises because of the discovery of COVID at the premises. That was an extension to the particular policy. Basically, the Ombudsman has dismissed it. So the Ombudsman, I mean, they're quite a few months behind in terms of backlog, but this was fast-tracked. So that Ombudsman's ruling is completely consistent with what the judgment says. So we have it in practice. I mean, disease at the premises, what people shouldn't do, I would suggest, and for the brokers, clients should be discouraged from judging the efficacy of a cover through the prism of the specific thing that has happened. Very dangerous to conclude that because a cover hasn't responded in one particular case, it's useless. And it would be a shame if SMEs voted with their feet with regards BI cover generally because of this. The FCA have given some specific evidence. If you've got a mile radius in the guide issued on the 3rd of March, they initially kind of say, well, go to the GPs and find out if they can say there were occurrences in the area or if there's a local university. So they've tried to be helpful and broaden the pitch, but you get a theme park out in the countryside, several miles from the nearest residences, and finding evidence within a mile, if that's your radius, can be a challenge. So disease at the premises, the judgment found didn't apply. Now, loss of rent. There are two things where I'm getting a lot of calls at the moment. One is disease at the premises, and the second is loss of rent. Loss of rent wasn't really discussed. And the problem with loss of rent is most loss of rent, most leases, the cessor of rent clause is based on damage, which makes premises uninhabitable. And there have been, so the courts grouped together a number of disputes, and a lot of the lawyers are sort of circulating guides, and essentially landlords took some tenants, including some well-known names at Sports Direct, they took them to court for non-payment of rent. And the tenants were saying, well, if you've got insurance cover, then you should let us off and claim it on your insurance. And these court cases have found that the insurance is predicated on damage at the premises, and therefore the policy should not pay, and the tenants basically have just got to cough up. It would have been useful to have more discussion. We may see litigation on loss of rent. Turnover rents, you can see are more clear. So if you have an insuring clause in a lease that says the landlord must insure for A, B, C, D, and anything else that the landlord believes is relevant, if the landlord has trotted off and got a policy including notifiable disease, that then may lead the tenants to say, well, you can claim under that. The point that the landlords were making in this litigation is that the insurance cover only becomes relevant if there's a loss of rent. And the rent is still receivable. Just because you as a tenant haven't paid it, it's still receivable. And in fact, it would, whether you paid it or not, if you weren't going to pay it, the landlord would have a bad debt in their profit and loss account, but it would still be in turnover. So the landlords were saying that the insurance cover is only there if there is a loss of rent to begin with, and B, a loss of rent which is insured under the policy. So it's interesting litigation that you probably should look up and maybe just manage expectations. So for me, the whole expectation thing with COVID and people talking about gaps in cover is, I think it's very unhealthy and unwholesome to assume that everything can be covered. There are some things that are just not insurable. And just jump in very briefly, things like interruption to internet connection. We've got a few claims where, you know, the expectation is insurers are basically underwriting every aspect of a business. So gaps in cover, I'm not sure about. So I've trotted through that fairly quickly and I'll stop sharing. Ray, I hope that was clear enough, but
yeah, thanks, Damien. That's brilliant and very, very good overview. Appreciate that. So, well, welcome some of you that may have joined later on in the session, but we're going to be coming on to a Q&A. We don't really have time to show you on the video, so we just do it via the chat. So we've had a couple come in. So if I may, the first one is from Lizzie. And I think I'll throw this over to Sarah. Have you made plans on how to integrate people back into the office? For example, sick days have been less. Are you going to let people work from home if they are sick? Will people have to give notice when they want to work from home? I know you've touched on it, but any thoughts on the sick pay side? So,
well, I think if people are sick, then they should be at home resting and not working. And you know, and that you know is our policy. You know, we wouldn't want them working from home if they were sick, but obviously, you know, sometimes you're ill but you can't do the commute, but you would want to, you know, you might feel better a bit later and might engage. I think that's just down to local managers to manage. We certainly wouldn't be enforcing anyone to work if they're ill. Integrating back in, it's going to be really difficult, and we're just going to have to try and do a few things, and then, you know, if it doesn't work, you know, pivot away again. We've got a phase plan at the moment. It's voluntary coming back because obviously social distancing does still have to be enforced, and at the moment, therefore, our reintegration is done voluntary basis with increasing numbers as we hope, as we are able to accommodate more people. In terms of, are people going to have to book the days off? Obviously, you know, my own personal view is, you know, people should be able to do whatever they want, so long as it doesn't impact on our customers or our ability to run the business or on their teammates. So there is going to have to be some communication, and I'm sure we'll end up finding a sort of a steady rhythm where people have certain days off. But I would hope that we'd be able to accommodate, you know, different requests, different weeks, and it'll just vary depending on what your role is and how able you are to do that job, you know, and whether you impact and rely on other people within the business. So no answers, I'm afraid. That's not very clear, is it? But
no,
I guess we're just working through some of these issues now. And, you know, it'd be interesting in 6 months' time if we had another conversation about hybrid or flexible working, you know, what people have found works and what doesn't, because I think we're going to learn a lot in the next few months.
Okay, great. Neil Williams just sent a comment for David to say it's great hearing about the practical problems and how companies communicate to their employees, which I think is really good. When people are going through different extreme situations and behaviours. And I think, David, if I may, if I could ask you to come in, just with regards to your colleague, sorry. And I think, you know, most of the people here are going through the motions and stuff, but what's the actual thing on the street? Are people saying to you, your colleagues, that they want to be in the office, or they're kind of hesitant, or, you know, any sort of ideas on that?
I think our experience is kind of all extremes. You know, we've got everything from a situation where we've had staff pleading with us to reopen our offices. And in certain cases where we thought for that individual's well-being, it was better for us to do that, we did do that. So we did accommodate a few people. So you did have a situation with maybe an office that would cater for 60 people, having 6 in it. But we've had to deal with that extreme. But equally, we've had a recent request, I believe, for someone who has asked to work permanently from home. So we've got both extremes. And as I tried to touch on before, the dynamics around individuals are highly individual, because everyone is an individual. They've all got different circumstances. You've got people with children, people with elderly relatives to factor into their lives. You've got, we've seen some really difficult situations created by, I believe, employers who have been massively unsympathetic to the employee's position, where we've worked very hard to work with our employees and put them first. We've seen situations where we've done that, and perhaps our employee's partner's employer has taken advantage of that. I mean, it's so at the moment it's all up in the air. We're as I said to you, I'm a firm believer that there's still a fair bit of fair bit of stuff still to come at us really on this, generally on COVID. And so, we're not in any big rush to say that we're going to take any particular position. I think that what I do know is it will never go back to the way it was before, and we will have to find a new balance. And that balance will, I suspect, take some time to evolve. So we're nearly in May now. I don't think that we will really know what it looks like and settles into a pattern until the end of the year, I suspect.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
There are just so many variables.
Yes, it's changing.
But you do have to get on with dealing with the day-to-day stuff that crops up, and so we're trying to work as consistently and give as consistent a message to our people to try and be fair to everybody, because I think that's all we can do, really.
Okay, thanks for that. And I think as you say, the key word and the whole of this stuff is all flexibility, isn't it? You've got to talk to individuals and go with them and listen and attach to it, just embrace it as such. So Damien, if I can ask you a question, this is one of my own actually, in that with regards to the business interruption market, do you foresee that, taking into account the issues, or rather the government funding and everything that's been happening, do you think the market will have significant rate increases, or if not, or maybe in addition to product tightening or wording? So, it's going to be tougher to make a claim, so to speak. Any thoughts on that?
I'm probably not qualified to speak about rates, but in terms of wordings, I've been involved with 2 insurers who've rewritten their wordings post Supreme Court judgment. And in fact, I sent something to a journalist yesterday where I don't know why, they had it in their minds that insurers had rewritten wordings after the High Court judgment. And you think, well, why would anyone do that? So wordings are being rewritten, and there are different approaches taken. Some insurers are stripping out disease cover, for example. Others are saying, well, we'll give disease cover, but at the premises, which still works for hotels, restaurants. And one of the insurers that I've spent a bit of time with looking at the wording has retained the 1 mile radius, but caveated it appropriately on the basis that that's what they believe SMEs want. And I would say, by the way, that the rewriting of the wordings could be viewed cynically. I don't think it is. Some policies have maybe needed sharpening in terms of their language for quite a long time. And you've got insurers with dozens and dozens of different variations of wordings, and they're trying to reduce those down to less than 10. So I think it's a great opportunity. And forgive me for giving a little name drop for one of the publications I was involved in, but the 2012 CII SILA business interruption wording report, which was refreshed in May 19. The CII did it as a landscape book, and as a father of 4 kids, I was a bit worried because that's children's storybook format normally, but they've done a fantastic job at it. Those 2 books have had nearly 280,000 hits between them, which is great in one sense, but it's still a waste of time in the sense that they were written to encourage policy wording change. So it's my hope that, you know, using terms like gross profit, which can only serve to confuse people, maybe if COVID is requiring wordings to be changed, maybe we can just drop some of that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Damien. Okay. One over to well, maybe Sarah. I don't know if you know about your own company, but the City of London have confirmed today that the within homes of the square mile or office buildings, there's going to be 1,500 converted. They've announced that today. So, have you got any plans to do anything with your buildings, or would you rather not say?
No, well, we have got plans. I think I touched upon it briefly earlier. We're going to maintain our branch network. We are definitely going to be still in our premises up and down the country. There will be some consolidation, but not because of COVID, but because of our merger with LV. So we have got locations where we've got more than one office. So that's just good business practice. Our offices that we will have will be reconfigured though. You know, they may be slightly smaller, but actually when you want collaboration zones or, you know, drop-in areas, that actually takes quite a lot of space. So I imagine the footprint will be exactly the same, but what happens inside the offices, people will only come when they're meeting others or they're going for training, or, you know, and the space you need for that is very different to, as I say, banks or desks. So we will be maintaining our locations, but as I say, the offices will be reshaped into something a bit more exciting than they are currently. Great.
Well, while I've got you on, just talking about the way that people have been behaving and with the changes that we're going through from a customer point of view, where they're now, you know, going online, easy access. Apparently, Direct Line have had a 55% increase and more than doubled in the last 2 years of customers going on the Direct Online portal. Is that something, do you think, will be kind of inevitable? It's going to increase traffic and also, you know, claims payment, and how that should, you know, emerge, if you like, with the self-service option?
Yeah, I mean, I think in personal lines it is inevitable. I think we've all made that flight, and I think we've gone up in as a country, something by 47% in 2020 compared to 2019 in terms of our digital transactions. So personal lines, absolutely. I think that journey started quite a long time ago, and I think that will just accelerate away. I myself had a travel claim a couple of years ago, and one of our competitors, which I'm insured with, did a very, very good job of paying it all online, all automatically. You know, it was really impressive, and I just think as society, we expect that level of service. We're all Amazon customers, and we accept the same in our insurance world. In commercial space, we've been talking forever that there's going to be a flight to e-trade, and actually COVID has proved the opposite, that it only takes a little bit of a complexity and immediately you know, customers or brokers want to speak to an expert underwriter, expert to expert, and so we've seen a resurgence of actually more coming into our branches than being placed on you know, on our e-trade platforms. As yet, we're still not seeing any direct business in a commercial space being transacted, and that's probably due to our strategy. I'm sure others do it, but it's not taking off in the same way.
Okay, great. So one for David, if I may. David, have you seen, very briefly if you can, a big shift with the way insurers have been behaving with broker or a broker such as yourself? You can talk in a generic point of view, but has there been better improved service standards, or would you say it's got worse, or is it about the same than pre-COVID?
I would say it was worse actually, because, you know, I don't know whether it's due to the insurer's home working situation or just generally the hard market. I mean, everything seems to take so much longer than it did before. So many things are under review. So many cases we seem to find we don't get them resolved to the last minute. But I think that's probably more to do with the hard market than COVID. But we've seen certainly quite interestingly, you get insurers who are, they're big gorillas, these companies, and they talk very forcefully what they expect us to have in place in terms of robustness if we hold their data, etc. And it's quite interesting. One of the big insurers, and it's not Allianz, they really struggle to operate online, whereas we made the transition. I'm not saying painlessly because it was pretty painful, but we did it pretty quickly. And we've run the business for a year remotely. And they are still today using, working from home as a bit of an excuse. And I think that's because they just didn't invest in their IT in the first place. So that goes full circle to my comments when I spoke earlier about the importance of IT and the fact that although we've proven, we've kind of tested our disaster recovery plan, if that makes sense, and it worked, we'll still be spending a lot of money on our IT to make sure that we're super resilient going forward and super flexible.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. So there has been a big shift in investment into our sector over the last year. Now, that's interesting. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but into the UK market, maybe Sarah, I don't know if you have anything to comment on that, just in a generic point of view, but looks like we're in for perhaps some good opportunities in the future, maybe mergers or things going on, not so far as Allianz is concerned, of course, but what's your view on that?
Oh, I think there's plenty of equity and capital out there. Broker consolidation still continues at a pace, and some really big acquisitions and mergers, and the same with insurers. Our Allianz, our M&A team in Munich, they globally look at hundreds and hundreds of opportunities every year. I haven't yet had a rumor that we're buying Aviva or RSA this year yet, but that there's always rumors that we'll be buying someone, and there'll be other insurers merging. I think COVID might stall that a little bit from an insurer perspective. I think people are focusing on their current operations, but who knows? There's so much money still available, and as I say, in the broker space, probably because their pipelines were quite advanced, there's still a huge amount of consolidation, and then that's not slowing down at any level. So
no. Okay, great. And there's an interesting comment from Phil in the chat box just about disruption to his business. It's not been too bad on the Zoom, but I would maintain that you still do need, like David said, is to go and see clients, to see the premises, because if you don't, you're kind of exposing yourself as a broker. David, you mentioned a couple of stories of a couple of your clients, and incidentally, I do like your drum kit in the background, so that's your de-stress mechanism, I hope.
Unfortunately, I'm totally musically talentless. My son, who's at one of the London Music Conservatoires, is extremely talented, but unfortunately, everything he does is very noisy. So it's probably see drum kits and marimbas. We've got all sorts of stuff.
Brilliant. But I think on the bits you mentioned about seeing clients and everything, it's imperative to do so. So I just wanted to reaffirm that. But I think at this point, we're due for a coffee break. I just really want to say thank you for the engaging session. It's been really good. And I must say, with this part, I could carry on for a couple of hours, but I'm sure, people will get a bit too over the top. So we're going to head off very shortly. What I would say, and I've maintained this with the Chamber of Commerce and where I've done talks and things, from a business perspective, or, whether that be an insurer, a broker or any other sector, we've got loads of different sector or aspects of business operations in this meeting. I think it's true to say that those businesses that engage with their employees, which we will learn more about, that embrace the change and act accordingly with those on an individual basis, those businesses that engage with their customers effectively, and I've seen some appalling cases by way of not our market, I would say, but from other areas where the communications have been quite lacking during lockdown. So I'm just saying that, those that engage with their customers throughout and continue to do so, those that engage with their suppliers even, and that seems a bit of a weird thing, but it certainly that's an area that needs addressing. and also those that engage, I would say, with the environment, because we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but there's a lot to be done there, so I'll leave it at that. But I would just say that I'm an environmental champion for Kent, and my business was the first insurance broker in the world to be carbon neutral when I had it, and also the first insurance broker in the world to be 14,001. So, you know, those that look at the environment, and there's loads of stuff you can tag into on that, but do it properly. Don't talk, you know, talk the talk. And then finally, really, those businesses that look at the community, and we didn't get a chance to talk about that, but, you know, your individual colleagues that might want to do something locally as an insurer, or, you know, an individual, then maybe embrace that, because instead of doing a national thing, Allianz is a very good example of stuff they're doing on a national basis, but get down to the, you know, drill down to that stuff. So community, championing the environment, championing the employees, championing your customers, championing the whole business will be the winners in the long term, because without doing that, there will be losers. So watch this space, but hopefully we'll go through all in the right direction. So I hope you've enjoyed this morning's session. We look forward to coming back at about 11:15, where we'll be hooking up with both Melinda and Esther. It's going to be a very entertaining and interesting session, so we look forward to that. So I'll let you grab a cup of coffee and come back shortly. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to our speakers and panel this morning.